Well, so far in this marathon, the sun had already set. The official timer was already turned off, and many people who were on the sidelines celebrating all of the runners in their great race of a marathon, many of them had left. And there was one man, a 39-year-old man named Michael, who crossed the finish line 20 hours after the marathon had started. Now, a typical marathon runner's pace is between 3 and 5 hours. Maybe for people like me, a little slower than that. But the average pace, and so 20 hours later, he crosses. And there's a newscaster there who is still wondering why there's still a chip of someone running and where are they at. And they see this person, they see Michael, and they ask him, hey, what is going on? What took you so long? He would explain to them that with an illness that he has, similar to muscular dystrophy, his marathon run was more of a walk. So he took more time walking than he did running. But he was running for a great cause. And so they said, well, then why did you even do this? If you're sick, if you're in pain, if you're hurting, why would you even run this race? And then he would say something that I have remembered since the first time I heard it. He would say, in any marathon, you have to know why you're doing it. Because in the last mile, the marathon is going to ask you. Now, why are we talking about marathons today? Because this world that we live in, we are in a marathon as well, this marathon called life. And if you think about where you're at today, many of us like to believe we have so much longer left. But the truth is, we don't know. It could happen in a moment. It could happen in an instant, 5 minutes from now. In this marathon of life, every single moment that we have is a gift from God. And for Michael, he said, you got to figure it out. You got to know why you're running. And so the news reporter said, well, then why did you run? What's your reason for running? He said, I'm raising money for the Boston Children's Hospital because they saved my life. Now, we look at each other. For those of us that know Jesus, those of us who are on our way to get to know Jesus, saying, why are you running this race called life? Why do you try to do everything so well and bring honor to this being that you call God? Why are you doing this? And the same way that Michael said he ran because Boston Children's Hospital saved his life, I run because there is a God in heaven who saved mine. And this run that we are on, we get to look back. We just sang that song, as I look back over my life. We're going to see a legacy of what we've left. We'll see a ministry of what we've done, and prayerfully a deep intimacy with God himself. But there is only a way for us to do it if we look to God's word and we actually say, Lord, what are we supposed to do in this marathon? I don't want to run flippantly. I want to run with purpose. And in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus shares with his disciples the purpose of it all. Like, well, why are we in this life? Why are we, spinning around the sun? And why are we on this axis? What is all this on? You hear me say it all the time. We're on this space rock flying through the sky. It's insane. For what? And Jesus says, I know many people are going to ask that question. In fact, many people have tried to live their entire lives defining what their purpose is, what their identity is, what their belonging is. And Jesus says, it's all in me. In fact, the disciples, to even start this conversation, they were asking Jesus about the end. Like, when is the kingdom of heaven fully going to be here? And Jesus said, I'm going to return. And they're like, you're still here. And he's like, I'm going to come back. And I'm going to come back with power and glory. And they're like, you have power and glory now. And he says, no, it's going to be a greater fullness understanding of it that you'll be able to have. Well, what do we do while we're waiting? They essentially ask. And in Matthew chapter 24, near the end, he says, blessed is the servant whom the master finds doing his job when he comes. He says, what are you supposed to do? Do what I've told you to do. And I've said it before, this quote that just has been wrecking me. We lived so much of our lives doing work, trying to maintain an image, when truthfully, we're image bearers with work to do. And what if we could get that today? What if everything could change for us today, the way we view our lives, the way we view this marathon that we're on? You and I might be closer to the end of the race than we believe. We might just be moments away. Maybe 40 years from now, 30, 20, 10, 5. I don't want to waste my life. Amen. I don't want you to waste yours. So maybe today we could lean into what Jesus says and change the way we view the world. Let's pray. Lord, we come before you now. God, we need you. Lord, we need to understand why we're here, what we're to do, how we're supposed to honor you. Lord God, we need you. Be with us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Matthew chapter 25. Matthew's in the New Testament. We've been here for the past couple weeks, right after the Old Testament, Malachi, or as I say every week, Malachi, and then we're going to be in Matthew. Matthew 25, we're going to start at verse 14. Jesus has been sharing these parables. He says, "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey." For what is just like a man? The kingdom of heaven. Remember, the word parable means to cast alongside. He's casting alongside a truth based on a heavenly truth based on an earthly reality. He says, I'm casting something along. I want you to understand this. The kingdom of heaven is like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey. Now, if you're wondering what a talent is just a weight of measurement when it came to a coin built of finance. And so it was a type of wages, but a talent is a extensive amount of money. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But I want us thinking about the greater value than just finance. I want to think about our lives. Verse 16. Immediately, the man who had 5 talents put them to work and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. But the man who had received 1 went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. Then the man who had received 5 talents approached the master. Look how joyous he is at the master's back. He presented 5 more talents. Master, you gave me 5, and look, I've earned 5 more. Verse 21, his master said, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Share in your master's joy. Then the man with 2 talents approached. He's like, I'm next. I can't wait, Jesus. Oh, this is so good. He said, I'm next. Master, you gave me 2. And see, I've earned 2 more. They're overjoyed because the master has come back home. Now, if you haven't already sensed it already, the master is Jesus, the servants is us. What are we supposed to do? Well, we got to keep reading. So the master says to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Share in your master's joy. The same response for the person who had 5, the person who had 2. Then the man who had received 1 talent approached. Probably a little slower. So wait, you guys doubled? You guys did something with what he gave you? Yeah, we did something. Oh. Verse 24, the man that had 1 talent approached and said, Master, I know you're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid the talent in the ground. See, here's what's yours. Right, this servant doesn't know the master. The servant believes that the master is so powerful in a way that we should be so scared in a way that we shouldn't even do anything with what he's given us because we might mess up and lose it. The master, look at this reply. You evil, lazy servant. Wow. I never want God to say that to me. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money, at least with the bank. You better go to B of A or something. And I would have received money back with interest on what I returned. Notice that the master in this verse, being Jesus, he doesn't say, you're right, I am an extremely hard man. He says, knowing what you think you know about me, you should have done something, but you did nothing. And even what you think you know is not what you should know, because it's not true. So, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. I'm going to bless him even more. Verse 29, for to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who doesn't have, even what he does have will be taken away. And then the master, we read this last week, verse 30, it's one of those painful, difficult verses that if we don't begin to allow ourselves to see people that we walk with on the street or that we work with or our neighbors, if we don't get to see the fact that we only have one life and our outcome is experienced for all of eternity. I'll say it again. We have one life and the outcome of that life is experienced for all of eternity. I don't want it to be wasted. So the master says, he didn't want what I gave him, obviously. He didn't want to expand what I've given him. Master says, throw the good for nothing servant into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. We talked last week, weeping and gnashing of teeth is radical sorrow and radical regret. Now, I know we have our ideas, and Hollywood has done a great job of telling us what we think the other side is going to look like. Here's what we know. Isolation, desperation, pain, and suffering. I don't think anyone wants that for this evening's dinner. I don't want that for my worst enemy. But what do I do with this life that I've been given? And how do I remain faithful with what I have? How do I remain watchful for the time when the master comes back? And how do I remain ready in such a way that when he comes back, I run up to him? Oh, I'm glad you're here, buddy. I got something for you. I can't wait to tell you what I did with what you had given me. And he says, I'm looking for this responsibility of service in every aspect of your life. Why does God look for that in every aspect of our lives? Again, I want you to think beyond just talent, as in a financial coin. I want you to think about everything that God has given you. Think about what he's given you. God has entrusted you with what he possesses and with what he values. He looks at you and he says, I value you. Therefore, I'm going to ascribe value to you based on what is already mine. Everything that we have came from him. He says, I value you and I trust you with what belongs to me. Now, my wife and I, we have 2 dogs. If I don't trust you, you can't watch my pets. I love you, though. Someone said facts, you know. So it was like, you wouldn't just go online, hey, I need a babysitter. This one has half a star. Good enough. You wouldn't do it. He looks at you and says, oh, I want to trust you with what is mine. But we have to get into this mindset where we begin to understand that he is the owner, not me. If he's the owner, then all that I have belongs to him. But we like to think, oh, I'm the owner. All that I have belongs to me. My car, my job, my people, my house, my everything, my gifts and talents that I may have, my time, it's all mine. And he's saying, no, I gave it to you. I want you to view yourselves as a steward, as a servant, that everything I have comes from God. And this is why we read in the text. He entrusted his possessions, the master's possessions. I love this famous quote that says, there is not a square inch of the earth in which humanity resides where the King of all glory is not having his arms stretched out, declaring over it all, mine. There is nothing, nowhere, that God doesn't own. He says, I am so sovereign that the hangnail you have is mine. That child that won't go to sleep, mine. And I'm just paying you back for when you were a kid, because you were worse, you know? He says, it's all mine. Everything. He says, I'm going to give you everything that you need to live a life that accomplishes everything that God has called us to do. And he does this by entrusting us with the 4 T's, as we say it at Newbreak: time, talent, treasure, and testimony. Time. Time is important. Time is the one thing that all of us have the same amount of when it comes to every single day, but many of us have learned how to utilize it in such a way that seems like we have more. You're like, no, retired people have more time. No, they don't. Their time is just used differently. How does that CEO have so much time? Well, because they work their behinds off, and they're at a place where their time looks different. Just this past week, I shared my calendar with one of our staff members, and they walked up to me and said, oh my goodness. I said, I know, but it's his time. And my calendar is full with things that we want to partner with him, and on my calendar I have my Jesus dates. I have my nobody bug me, I'm just hanging out with Jesus. That's on my calendar. I schedule time with Jesus. It's his time. You think about talent. Like, think about the things you're just naturally gifted at. Maybe you can speak really well. Maybe you can sing extremely well. And you're wondering, man, I'm not ready to get on the worship team because, they're just, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Why not? Maybe you have a talent to be able to serve the next generation, and you're just worried about messing up, the next generation with not knowing everything. You don't need to know everything. Just know one thing. God good, devil bad. We're good. Let's move forward. You continue to teach that every single day. And then you'll start to say things like, God is so good. And the devil wants to steal my joy. And you'll say, God is so insurmountably good, I can't even put it into the words. And I found the devil working hard. Then you might say, if I could only understand how good God is, I might be able to give you a couple words to hopefully change your life. But there's an enemy who's speaking lies as well. You have the talent. Maybe you can fix cars. Maybe you can build things. Maybe you can write. I'm telling you, give those talents to God, bow before him and say, what do you want me to do with this? You're saying, I just like art. Perfect. Use it for the glory of God. Watch what can happen when we realize he's entrusted us with it. And he says, now do something with it. I want you and I, just for a moment, to think about the talents, the gifts that God has given us, the things that we have just naturally in our abilities, that us, like the person with the one talent, we dug a hole and put it into the ground and said, no one needs to know about that. They don't need to know that I used to work after school programs and I could maybe help the next generation. They don't need to know that I've actually written books. They don't need to know that I used to sing in choirs. And they don't need to know that I have a great knack for accounting. So you just dig it in the ground and you're wondering, God, what's my purpose? And he's saying, you better start digging it back up. Get it back out there. Because what's in God's hand doesn't place into our hand to expand the kingdom. That's just time and talents. Then you get to treasures. Think about your finances right now. I've said it before. If you're in this room watching online, have the ability to watch online, we're pretty stinking good. Now, you may be thinking, well, I got to be smart about my meals. Imagine not knowing if a meal was coming. We're blessed with our treasures. What if we use them to expand God's kingdom? And then our testimony. This is where many of us get testimony envy. When I first met my wife, she would share her God story, and I would tell her how jealous I was that she grew up in church and didn't veer too far from God, and she just kept focusing on him. And I was like, man, I wish that was me. And she's like, tell me your story. And I was like, well... She told her about addiction and pain and anger and frustration and anger management and accidents and getting involved in trouble with the police and just all of these things. And she's like, I used to want a story like that. I'm like, really? No, you don't. But we all get this story envy. We all seem to want a story that we don't have. God didn't give you their story. And if I stood up here and told you someone else's story, everyone would realize it's phony. If I said, I grew up in church and sang in the church choir and never did any... Someone's already laughing. They're like, please, we know you didn't. I know. That's someone else's story. But whatever God has given you in your time, your talents, your treasures, and testimony is for you to expand the kingdom. You're like, well, how much is God going to bless me with? Well, that's the key of this parable, is that the measure of our responsibility is connected to the measure of our ability. He says, I'm going to give you what you can handle. And we know this verse, right? God doesn't give us more than we can handle. Here's what I love about this verse. I've already said it's taken out of context. We're going to use it in context today. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. For even when it comes to temptation, for even when you are tempted, there is always a way out. That's the full verse. You know what the temptation is when it comes to our time, talents, treasures, and money and testimony? We want someone else's and we want more of it. And there's a danger of us wanting more where we're trying to push our ability past what we can actually be responsible for. And God's saying, I'm not going to give you more than you can handle. Because if you had more time, Marcus, you might screw it up. You're right, man. For sure. For sure. If you had more treasure, you'd be out there getting everything you could get your G7. I mean, you're flying around, flying to church from across the street. I might, Jesus. You know, you're right. Keep me right here. He says, I'm only going to give you what you can handle. When you start to feel tempted that you want someone else's time, someone else's talent, someone else's treasure, someone else's testimony, I'm going to remind you that even the one who had 5 and the one who had 2 knew that their role was to take care of what God had given them. So if our ability is at a place where God can utilize it and transform us and help transform the world around us, we have to really realize when it comes to my time, talent, treasures, and testimony, whose kingdom am I building? And only you know. Your spouse may not even know. Your best friend may not know. Whose kingdom are you building? Because Jesus looks at us somehow and he says, according to your ability, I'm going to give, this person gets 5, this person gets 2, and this other person gets 1, but all according and depending on your ability. Then I'm going to go on this journey. It's like Jesus himself takes an inventory of our capacity and our character. He says, I want you to have the capacity to be able to handle what I'm giving you and the character to be humble as I give it to you. We've seen some people with more time, talent, treasure, and testimony than maybe we do. And they walk around like they're the best person in the world. Look at me. God says, no, I want to see my character when I give it to you. And just to figure out the weight of everything that God has given us, a talent is the measurement of finance. And so I want you to see how we kind of get to this number. I mean, just figure working wages. Now, if you were to work one day during this time in ancient Near East, you would receive a drachma. If you were to work 4 days or maybe a week, you'd get a shekel. And then after you'd have a shekel, if you worked a year, you'd get a mina. And then if you worked for 20 years, roughly 20 years, possibly a little more, 20 years, you would get 1 talent. And imagine what you are making right now if someone paid you a lump sum for 20 years of work and said, here you go. Even just at $50,000 a year, we're like, okay, let's find this median. $50,000 a year times 20 is $1 million. God has given you millions of worth in the gifts that he's given you, in the time, and the talent, and the treasures, and the testimony that he's given you. He walked up and he said, for you, you get 5 million. Go ahead. Here's 5 million things I want you to do to transform the world around you. And walks to another one. He says, 2, you're getting 2 million things in ways that I want you to transform the world. And for 1, you're getting 1 million things. And what I love in this story is no one compares with each other. The servants aren't like, how many did you get? Because the truth is, if someone was walking around giving out millions of dollars, you'd be okay if you got 1. And if you wouldn't, we got to talk. You should be. You're living beyond your means if $1 million ain't going to cut it for you. We should be okay. They don't start looking at each other and like, you only, please, man, you should do more than that. I remember myself falling into that. When I first got into ministry, I was leading worship. And I had the privilege to go and travel and lead worship, and I loved doing it. And we had a really, really stinking good team. The band was just unbelievable. We played gospel. We could play contemporary Christian music. We could play reggae worship, which was so fun. Reggae worship, think about it. It's awesome. We had so much fun. And we go to these different conferences and venues and camps. And there was one time when I was at a church, there was a conference, and it was multiple days long, multiple bands. And every band that went up that wasn't ours, I was like, I mean, they're good. But I mean, they can't do How Great Is Our God in reggae, tell you that right now, you know what I mean? They don't do, Lord, you are good and your mercy endureth forever, right? They're not doing that. Then the next band would come up, and I'm like, that drummer's okay. I don't know why they sing that song. I know I'm stepping on some toes in the room because we do the same thing, right? And then it was our chance. And I remember turning around, I looked back, and I was like, we ready for this? Started playing. Things sounded great. It was awesome. The pastor walks up to me and puts his hand on my shoulder. And he said, Marcus, don't let your talent take you where your character can't keep you. You and I have been gifted. But if we allow those giftings to give us a character that is anything but humility as the Father is, we really have to be careful. Because great character is found in how we steward the gifts of our Father. How are we stewarding God's gifts? The amount that he is giving us, he says, I want you to continue to become more and more like me. Be more like me tomorrow is what he tells us. Be more like me right tomorrow than you are today. Just continue to be more like me, and just watch what he does. As we walk through this life, I've said this before, I walk through life with open hands. My hands have never been full, but they've never been empty. He says, I'm always going to help you. I'm always going to heal you. I'm always going to support you. I'm going to cover you. I'm going to give you the strength that you need in times of mourning. I'm going to comfort you. He says, I have what you need. But if you allow your character to get in the way of it, Marcus, you're not going to be able to fully participate in the gifts of the kingdom of heaven. Oh, I want to experience his gifts. Like, what do I do with the time, the talent, the treasures that has been entrusted to me? Well, we allow it to be something that we steward. And that we realize stewarding is about producing fruit, not preserving riches. In fact, earlier in the book of Matthew, in Matthew chapter 10, he would tell the disciples and some others who were listening, he would say, here's what I want you to do. Go to the lost sheep. heal them, raise them from the dead, cleanse them, and drive out the demonic forces. And we're like, God, what should we do? Go to the lost sheep, heal them, bring them back from the dead, restore them, revive them, and just remove and cast out demonic forces. We're like, God, I don't know what I should do. I have this new job. Go to the lost sheep, heal them, restore them, revive them, bring them back to life, and just remove the demonic forces. Imagine if that's what would happen on church platforms, on social media, in our political realm, if you had someone who said, I'm here to do one thing, to go after the lost, to heal them, bring them back to life, to restore them, and to remove the demonic forces. That's how you use your time, your talent, your treasure as well. But how have we managed it? I think really it comes down to the way that we see in this parable that the man who had 5 was willing to put him to work, and the one who had 2 put him to work, and the other one just dug him into the ground because he wanted to hide. And we have to get to the fact and understand that the kingdom of heaven is always about expansion, never stagnation. Wherever you're at today is not where God says, all right, you've arrived. Ever. And so we're with him in glory. He says, there's always something else I'm doing in you, Markus. And he's looking for consistent, committed service to the King. Could you be productive with all that God has blessed you with? If he's entrusted everything that he values to you, we're simply servants and stewards. God is the master. I can never get it wrong. Your family is God's. And he says, you can have them for a little while. Your job, God gave you that job. And then I love that we complain about the job that we prayed about that God gave us. Your car, your ability to write, to listen, to read, to hear, all of it. It's all his. He says, I want you to share in my joy because I'm the master and you're the servant. And you share in my joy when you can answer these 3 crucial questions that each of us must answer. Number 1, what do I have that belongs to Jesus, who is the master? There's only one right answer. Everything. In fact, it's almost like a bad question. What do I have? Nothing. It all belongs to him. What is on loan to me? Everything. And the second question, only you can answer. What am I doing with what Jesus has trusted me with? Like, what am I doing with everything that belongs to Jesus? The time I have, the talent, the treasure, the testimony, my family, my job, the house, the car, that time on vacation, my rest, my work. What am I doing with it? And then finally, what do I want to hear when Jesus comes back? We read in this passage there were 2 responses. I'll tell you what I want to hear. Well done. I heard a pastor say it this way. I want God to say, well done when I get into heaven. Not, well, you know. He'd be like, you just made it, buddy. Oh, praise the Lord. Okay. No, I want him to say, Markus, well done. You walk through life open-handed. They may have never felt full to you, but I poured out more blessing you could ever imagine. But you walked in a way that pleased the Father. Well done. That's what we all want. But we only get there if we realize that this passage will remind us that it's better to be faithful with the small things than to be unfaithful with everything. He says, you want to walk onto platforms of thousands and thousands of people? Would you be willing to lead that meeting at your office place with humility and respect? God, there's only 4 people. It's not even a real meeting. Well, you're not going to get to the 8 or the 800 if you don't care for that piece. God, if I had more money, things would be worked out. I'll start tithing then. I'll get things figured out. I'll build the kingdom. Just I need a little more. And he says, if 1 talent isn't enough for you, 5 won't be either. God, if I just had a little bit more time, I'd spend some more time with you in the morning, and I might pray and maybe start reading that Bible thing. He says, you already have 24 hours. If that's not enough. Maybe you're doing too much. Maybe it's not that God's doing too little. Maybe it's that you and I may be doing too much. But notice he says, well done, and he says, good and faithful. I love that God looks for his character in you and me. He said, I'm looking for goodness and faithfulness. Why? Because all throughout Scripture, it sings about God's goodness and his faithfulness. I love how it says in Psalm 106, hallelujah! Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. Why is he looking for goodness and faithfulness? Because we're in his image. And he says, is there anyone like me out there? That's using everything that I've given them in a way that expands the kingdom. Someone who's willing to make themselves lower so that God would be made greater. Is there anyone out there? And he says, will you allow your living to be foundational in this piece of thanksgiving? Because the race isn't over and there's more. And just like we started, in any marathon, you must know why you're running, because in the last mile, it's going to ask you. I know why I'm running. I serve an amazing master who has saved me. And he's returning. And this marathon of life, I just got to remain faithful. And I want to give it all before the finish line. Early this morning, many of you know my family's been on this journey with my mom and her illness. Early this morning, she passed. And we had talked earlier that she was either going to watch online or she was going to watch in heaven. And I went, well, Marcus, how can you stand up there like this? Because I know that she ran a marathon worth living. If it weren't for my mom, I wouldn't be saved. That's simple. If it weren't for my mom, I wouldn't even know my sister. We're a blended family. Many of you may not know, and it still confuses me, but it's awesome. If it weren't for my mom, my aunts wouldn't be here today. My cousin here today. My Aunt Ginger, Aunt Linda, Candy. It's almost like in the marathon of life, God is saying, are you willing to give it all as you approach that finish line? I don't want to get up to heaven and say, I still had something left. I should have done it all. My mom passed holding my stepdad's hand. We were with her. Friday evening, my sister and I washed my mom's feet. It's a sign of honor and respect because she remained faithful. My wife's here. Another sister of mine, Celeste, is here. Our family is here today because our family is in church together because my mom is experiencing the greatest service in heaven right now. Come on, give God a hand. The last thing she would hear of us is us telling her that she was an amazing mom, and that we loved her, and that she did everything she could do with what she had. And I don't have time to get into the difficulty of my life growing up, but to get into my mother's difficulty would take decades and decades and decades. But with the very little that she had, she knew it came from God. She said, there's something I must do with it. And she did. And she raised 3 crazy kids who somehow in a time of loss can still say God is good. Because I think just like Paul would say, as he's 60 years old on his deathbed, he would write to his protege, Timothy, and he would tell him, I'm already being poured out as a drink offering. Church, I'm already being poured out as a drink offering. I have nothing else to give. God, whatever you want, it's yours. Lord, you can have it all. I'm not standing here to say, be like me. Don't. Be like him. And I know there was a God who sent his son, Jesus, onto a cross and said, I'll give it all. Just this past Wednesday, we were talking with some of the staff and the pastors, and I told them, it breaks my heart that Psalm 31:5, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, for you have redeemed me, O Lord, a righteous one. My favorite verse, it breaks my heart that Jesus cried that on the cross because it should have been me. But Lord, I'm being poured out. It all belongs to you. All of it, Lord. This is Paul. It's all been poured out. The time of my departure is close, like he's in an airport and he says, the plane's coming, folks. Church, the plane's coming. You might have 40 years. You might. 50. I don't know. But don't wait. My mom didn't wait. Paul didn't wait. I don't want to wait. Lord, if that's what you're calling us, we'll be the drink offering for you. And I shared this verse with my mom, and I said, Mom, you have fought the good fight. You have finished the race. You have kept the faith. And because of that, there is a generation who will never be the same, because I declare, God, you are my everything. And our family is here today because you are our everything, and you're comforting us in this pain, God. But Lord, we're going to fight. We're going to continue the race. We're going to keep the faith, because even in the midst of pain, you are still good. And then Paul says, I'm not done. The pen is still in my hand. He says, there's reserved for me a crown of righteousness, which my mom is getting right now, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day. And not only to me, church, this is us. We're in the Bible right here. But to all those who have loved his appearing. I want to walk up to him and say, Lord, here's what I did with my talent. Here's what I did with my time, my treasure, my testimony. Lord, to bring you glory. That's all I want. If we can get there. If we can be good and faithful as we cross the finish line of life in this marathon that we're running in, and we look more like him, and he says, where are my kids at? And we go, it's right here, Dad. That's what I want. If you want to be successful on earth, there's a ton of books about it. You want to be successful to the King in the kingdom of heaven? Just be good and faithful. Start there. I don't know how to be good. I know. I'm still figuring it out. He does. What does faithful mean? Just cling to him. Let him be your everything. So I've been praying one thing. This past week with my family, and I'm going to continue to pray it. I'm saying, Lord, teach me to be good and faithful in your eyes, because that's all that matters. So I want to invite you to pray with me. Maybe you could just repeat after me. Say, Lord, teach me to be good and faithful in your eyes. Amen. I know at a time like this, you may be wondering, what do we need? What's the family need right now? You can send the text and the calls and the love. We would cherish that, of course. If we may not reply right away, there's just a lot going on as we make preparations and figure out what's next. We have family all over the nation, and many on the East Coast, and it's going to take some time. We just need your prayers. And you want to please the Father? Don't worry about pleasing me. You want to please the Father? Let's bring heaven to earth. Let's be good and faithful with the time that we have left, because we don't know when the race is over. And what we can do in the meantime is, you heard from Pastor Kumar, if it's your first time, we'd love to connect with you. But I invite you to pray. Pray for all of us. And many families are going through a lot of pain right now. Pray. Join us on Wednesdays at 6 a.m. at our prayer gatherings. That's early in the morning, I know. And it's his time. I'll tell you why I am so convicted about this moment praying in the morning. It's because there was a time when there was a 6 a.m. prayer at a church that I was planting, and I said, God, I don't want to do it. And he said, are you going to desire sleep more than you desire a relationship with me? And I said, never again. So now I just get up before then anyways. I'm going to be with them. But I want to invite you to join us on Wednesdays at 6 a.m. for prayer. If you need prayer today, well, the people over at the cross. Church, God is still good. And I thank you so much for loving us during this time. You are what we need, because you carry the goodness and the faithfulness of the Father. Let's continue to be that church. Let me pray for you. God, I thank you so much for your love, your grace, your tenderness, your joy, your goodness in the midst of all of this. Lord, let us not compare one life to another. God, all we have is one life. and the outcome of that life is experienced for eternity. Lord, let the outcome be glorious to you. We want to walk with you, God. We want you to be famous. Jesus, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, church, we'll see you next Sunday.